What's up guys, my name is Ace, and today we're going to be talking about combat rigs in Infinite Warfare. I'm going to be talking about my favorite ones to use, my favorite setups to use, and also the ones that I tend to avoid and stay away from. And the purpose behind this is to just offer you a different perspective and some insight into why I make the decisions that I make. And in the future, it just might help you make some more informed decisions when you're choosing your combat rigs. Let's get into it. Alright guys, so I just want to preface this by saying that everything here is going to be my opinion based on my playstyle and my personal preferences, and feel free to disagree with me. I don't want you guys to just copy exactly what I say because your playstyle might be different, your approach to the game might be different, and therefore something else may be better suited for you. Also, the mindset that I tend to have with these combat rigs in this game is not so much like a goal I work towards, it's more so just something that I use to help support my normal playstyle and keep my life going. I'm not somebody that is really excited about combat rigs. I honestly think the game would be a little bit better off without them, but at the end of the day, they're here and I just get used to them and I use the ones that I enjoy using. So let's kick it off with Warfighter, and I just want to go through the payloads first. First up, we have the Claw, and with the Claw, I want to explain why I generally tend to avoid all of the weapons with these payloads. So this not only applies to the Claw, but it applies to a lot of the other payload weapons as well. The reason I tend to avoid using them is I feel like a lot of the times they're going to be like a high risk, high reward type of thing, or they cause you to change up your playstyle and potentially break any sort of momentum that you have with your gun. When I'm playing the game, I'm quite confident with my gun, and I really get into a flow using whatever gun that I'm using. When I call in one of these payloads, a lot of times I either call it in at a bad time and then it's like, oh no, my time's running out, now I need to push into the enemy spawn. And it causes me to make really stupid decisions that way. Or in the case of some of these payload weapons, they're going to be a high risk, high reward thing, where like if you hit your shot, it's an insta-kill, but if you miss, you're screwed, you're dead. You've got no chance of really fighting back. Whereas when you have your normal gun out, it's a lot more consistent and basically it all relies on just your skill, and it's a little bit more forgiving, even though you don't have that chance of like an insta-kill with most guns. So this is why I generally tend to avoid the payload weapons, and this is going to apply to a bunch of them, so I don't have to talk about them in great detail in the future. Having said this, the Claw is pretty simple to use. It's not really a high risk, high reward. It's basically you pull it out and you're going to destroy anything in front of you, so the Claw is a bit of an exception there, but I still tend to avoid running it. Moving on to combat focus, again, it's just not something I run too often. I just feel like other things can help me a whole lot more and like help me actually stay alive in a life instead of just working up towards a score streak a little bit faster. After that, we've got Overdrive, and I don't really use Overdrive too often. I think this is mainly because I don't play a ton of objective game modes, and therefore, like, getting from point A to point B isn't as important. At least getting there really, really quickly isn't as important, so I tend to avoid using Overdrive. If I played some more Defender or some more, maybe Search and Destroy or Capture the Flag or Uplink or something like that, then yes, I would be running Overdrive a lot more often. As for traits with Warfighter, Ping is excellent. I really do like Ping, and if I am using Warfighter, like if I just Prestige and it's all I have available, I will always run Ping for Warfighter, because Persistence, I'm not really concerned about trying to carry my streaks over through death. I'm quite confident in earning my streaks without dying, so I just don't use Persistence at all. And Resupply, I also very rarely use Lethals and Tacticals, so this really just doesn't do anything for me. Moving on to Merc, I actually use Merc sometimes. I would say it's like my second or third most used combat rig. And with Merc, for the payload, I don't usually use Steel Dragon, although sometimes I will just because I've gotten some cool quad feeds and stuff with it. But I just, again, I prefer to just keep my gun up and not break my momentum or anything. So I don't usually use Steel Dragon. Bull Charge, I never use. And the reason for Bull Charge is it's one of those high risk, high reward type things. Like, yeah, you can use it. And in some situations, you get a really cool like double kill or triple kill or maybe even a quad kill with it. But many times you'll end up just going right past your enemy. You'll miss your enemy. He'll jump to the side or something. And then you're completely exposed and vulnerable and it'll just end your streak. It'll just get you killed. So I just completely avoid Bull Charge. Reactive Armor is something that I use relatively often because I like the fact that I like using payloads that keep my streak alive. I can use them as kind of that panic button, I guess, to make up for a mistake that I make in my life. So if I end up making a mistake where I put myself in a bad situation and I realize that, I can use this to escape that and give me another chance within that life. So this is why I do like using Reactive Armor when I'm using Merc, and it's my most commonly used Merc payload. As for traits, Infusion is excellent. This is kind of my go-to when I'm using Merc, is just Infusion. But Man-at-Arms is great if you're running LMGs. So a lot of times if I'm running an LMG, I will run Man-at-Arms. Not so much with assault rifles and SMGs though. And then finally, Shockwave. Honestly, I really haven't used it too much. I've seen some really cool things done with Shockwave, but I feel like it would just cause me to play too aggressively and make some stupid decisions trying to go for a cool kill. And for me, I prefer to play consistently well and not take stupid deaths like that, so I just avoid using Shockwave. Moving on to Synaptic, I use Synaptic sometimes as well. For equalizers, I don't usually use the equalizers. I feel like they were a lot better before and they caught some sort of a hidden nerf. I don't know if that's actually true. Maybe people have just gotten better at the game or something. But I just feel like these are quite inconsistent. Like the hip spread on them is quite terrible in my opinion. Even though they have a crazy rate of fire and everything. Yes, you'll dominate everything right up close. But as soon as you get to that mid-range, I find myself losing a lot of the times to SMGs and assault rifles. So I don't really use Equalizer too often, but I do use Rewind a fair amount. And a big thing I like about Rewind is it replenishes your health as well as all of your ammo when you hit that Rewind button. So this is why I like using Rewind. I don't like it as much as Glitch from Black Ops 3 because Glitch was like a super instant sort of thing, and it was a lot more predictable, I feel. But Rewind is still a solid choice. As for Reaper, I just stay away from it. Again, I feel like it's one of those payloads where it's kind of high risk, high reward. Yeah, you might get some cool kill sprees with it, but there's a good chance it's just going to make you play in a way that gets yourself killed. Like you're going to run into their spawn and end up getting yourself killed with it. So I stay away from that. For traits, I don't really like his traits too much. So I just kind of pick Combat Burst or Propulsion, whatever I'm feeling like using at the time. I don't really feel like I need to. It's just like I need to pick a trait, so I'm going to pick one of those two. Rushdown, I just don't really use that too often. I feel like it just feels weird and clunky in this game, and it doesn't really benefit me that much. Moving on to my favorite combat rig, this is FTL. I use FTL most of the time. I've actually been trying to force myself away from using FTL, just because I use FTL so often. I don't typically use the Eraser, mainly because of super high charge time, and again, it's one of those somewhat risky, somewhat high risk, high reward sort of guns. Although the risk isn't too high because it's got a good rate of fire, so even if you miss your first shot, you often have time to take a second shot with the Eraser. But the charge time's simply too high, so you're really only earning this once or twice in a game, depending on the game mode that you're playing. I would much rather earn FTL jump and phase shift many, many times throughout a match, and both of these help me find success in games. FTL jump, I just find really fun and satisfying to use. I love FTL jumping behind a guy that thought he was going to win that gunfight against me, but you just FTL jump behind him, shoot him in the back. It's really fun, really enjoyable for a rusher, and that's why I love using FTL jump. And then phase shift, I've been having a lot of fun with phase shift. I honestly think this needs to be nerfed a little bit. I think maybe just the charge time should be nerfed slightly on FTL, or on phase shift. But as it is right now, I am enjoying using it. It is quite fun, and I really love getting those phase shift kills when other people phase shift as well, and you enter the same dimension as them and you kill them. Such a satisfying kill, so I love using phase shift for that. As for my FTL traits, I usually use Supercharge just so I can earn that FTL jump and that phase shift super, super quickly. So I really like that. I tend to stay away from Perception. I feel like it's just a little bit distracting at times, and generally I know when someone has a line of sight on me anyways, so I just feel like I don't need it. And Power Slide, I only use Power Slide when I'm going for slide kill challenges, which is quite a bit these days, so I have been using it a lot, but normally if I wasn't going for slide kill challenges, I don't think I'd ever really use Power Slide. Supercharge is my go-to. Moving on to quite possibly my least favorite combat rig, this is Striker. And with Striker, I just don't really use him much at all. Gravity Vortex gun takes a long time to charge. It's a high risk, high reward type thing, or high risk, mid-range reward type thing in my mind. Yeah, you might get a cool shot on a double kill or a triple kill or something, but then somebody could very easily shoot you in the side while you're doing this. I'd rather keep my gun up than have this thing out. Micro turret, every time I've used this, I've got at least a couple extra deaths trying to call in my micro turret at the wrong time. Now that's partially my fault, but also it just feels, I feel like it's a little clunky to call in, and I wish it would be a little bit easier to call those things in. Plus they're super easy to destroy, so I just don't see really much benefit. And Centurion, I'll be honest, I've never used Centurion, and I don't plan on using Centurion. Partially because I don't really play too many objective game modes, but also I just feel like I'd much rather use FTL jump or phase shift or reactive armor or something like that. As for traits, again, none of these really stand out to me. I don't tend to use equipment, so hardened isn't really going to do much for me. Trophy drone, I guess, is my go-to with this, just because I guess it'll protect me from maybe some nades or something. but even then, I don't really die to nades too often, so it's not going to help me a ton. And relay, again, I don't really care about that too much. I don't really worry about that a lot, so yeah, nothing really does it for me with Striker Rig. There's nothing I really like about Striker. It feels like I'll use it if I feel forced to use it just because I'm not using it enough. As for Phantom, I do use Phantom every now and then. The problem is a lot of this stuff is unlocked so late. I don't tend to use the Ballista. Again, high risk, high reward type thing. Pulsar is kind of decent, and I feel like I'm going to start using it a little bit more often because it is kind of neat. But I haven't really been using it too much. And Active Camo, I really do enjoy, but it's unlocked so late in the Prestige, and I'm just not willing to spend one of my permanent unlock tokens on it at this point. So maybe down the road I'll use one of my permanent unlock tokens, like Prestige 7 or 8, but as it is right now, it's just lower on the list for me as far as using an unlock token on, and therefore I very rarely use it. If I am using Phantom, I will typically use Mark Target or Heightened Senses. But again, Heightened Senses is unlocked really late there. Rear Guard, I don't usually get shot in the back. I feel like I generally have pretty good awareness of what's going on around me. So Rear Guard, I just feel like isn't really that needed for me or that helpful for me. Mark Target is just super powerful. You hit a guy, he takes a very long time to heal when you hit him, and you have Mark Target. And yeah, Heightened Senses is actually pretty cool. I've been playing around with this a bit. I plan on doing a video on this in the not so distant future. It's a neat feature for people with headsets. It's not quite as powerful as like awareness or anything, but it's kind of nice, and it does alert me to enemies' presence sometimes that I wasn't aware of. So yeah, Heightened Senses isn't a terrible choice. So there you have it. Overall, what I like to use is typically going to be FTL with Phase Shift or FTL Jump and Supercharge, and my other go-to is going to be Merc with Reactive Armor and Infusion. I'd like to know in the comment section below, what are your guys' favorite setups for your combat rigs? If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.